38 farmers spent thousands to kill pests. One farmer spent $10 on flowers. They laughed at him until the bugs came back. His name was Thomas Hale. And on a Tuesday morning in the spring of 1992, he stood in a gravel parking lot in Boone County, Iowa, watching 38 other farmers line up to buy the same thing. A bright yellow drum. Predator X7. A new pesticide the dealer said would solve everything. Victor Crane stood on the back of his truck, loud enough for everyone to hear. "This right here," he said, "is the end of your pest problem. Aphids, borers, cutworms, gone. Guaranteed." He tapped the side of the drum, hard. Confident. "Apply once," he said, "and your fields are protected for the entire season." That was all it took. One promise. One solution, one line formed. Then another. Men stepped forward with checkbooks. Names were written down. Orders taken. Because in farming, certainty sells. And this sounded certain. Thomas stood off to the side. Not in line, not moving. Just watching. He had farmed 240 acres for nearly 25 years. Corn and soybeans. Same ground, same rotation. And every year, the same problem. Bugs. Always bugs. Some years worse. Some years manageable. But never gone. Victor spotted him. Of course he did. A man not buying stands out. "Thomas," he called out. Loud enough for everyone to turn. "You getting in on this or what?" A few heads shifted. Eyes followed. Thomas didn't answer right away. He looked at the drum. Then at the line. Then back at Victor. "I'm not using it," he said. The words landed. Flat. Clear. Victor blinked once. Then smiled. "You're not using it." "No." A pause. Then someone behind him laughed. Not loud, just enough. "Got a better plan," another voice said. Thomas nodded slightly. "I'm planting flowers." That's when the laughter came. Real this time. Open. Shared. "Flowers?" someone repeated. "You serious?" Victor shook his head, still smiling. "Thomas," he said, "you've got bugs eating your crop, and your solution is flowers." A few more laughs. A few heads shaking. Because in that moment, it didn't sound different. It sounded ridiculous. Thomas didn't react, didn't defend it, didn't explain. He had heard it before. The same reaction, the same doubt. Because what he was thinking wasn't how people farmed. Not here. Not now. Victor turned back to the crowd. "All right," he said. "Who's next?" The line moved again. Orders kept coming. Checks kept signing. And Thomas stood alone. One man, not buying, not following, while everyone else did the same thing. That afternoon, 38 farmers left with the same solution. And one farmer left with something else. A different idea. Because Thomas wasn't trying to kill the bugs. He was trying to understand them. And that difference was about to change everything. But standing in that parking lot, with people still laughing behind him, it just looked like a mistake. By early May, the county had changed. Not all at once, just enough to notice. Fields that had been quiet started to move. Small things, hard to see, until they weren't. aphids on the undersides of leaves, cutworms near the base of young plants, borer eggs laid where no one looked. Normal. Expected. That's when the spraying started. One field, then another, then 10 more. Predator X7 moved across Boone County in long, even passes. Boom arms out, mist hanging low over the rows. Clean, efficient, controlled. Within days, the insects were gone. At least, the ones people could see. At the co-op, the tone shifted. Confident now. Told you it worked. Did the whole south field in a morning. Not a bug left. Heads nodded. Stories matched. Proof everywhere. Because quick results feel like truth. Someone mentioned Thomas. Of course they did. He's still planting flowers. A few smiles. A few quiet laughs. Haven't seen a sprayer on his place. Guess he's waiting for the bees to save him. More laughter. Easy. Certain. Because from the road, Thomas's field didn't look better. It looked strange. Edges lined with color. Thin strips along the fence. Yellow. White. Purple. Flowers. Not crops. Not yield. Wasted space. That's what it looked like. One afternoon, a truck slowed along his boundary. Window down. "You really doing this?" the driver called. Thomas was walking the edge of the field, checking leaves, looking underneath them. "Yeah," he said. The man glanced at the flowers, then back at the rows. "You know they've already sprayed, right?" "I know." "And?" "I'm not spraying." A pause, then a small shake of the head. "Good luck with that." The truck moved on, dust settling behind it. Thomas didn't respond. He bent down again, lifted a leaf. There were insects there, small, clustered. He watched them for a moment, then looked a few inches over. At something else. A different insect, moving slower, deliberate. He didn't touch it, didn't disturb it, just watched. Because what he was looking for wasn't damage. It was behavior. Back at the co-op that weekend, the story hadn't changed. Fields are clean. Didn't take long. Best money I spent all year. No one mentioned what wasn't there. Because they weren't looking for it. No beetles. No wasps. No spiders in the rows. Just absence. Clean fields. Empty. And Thomas was still the one man doing nothing about it. Or at least, that's how it looked. Because the difference between doing nothing and doing something no one understands is almost impossible to see, especially at the beginning. By mid-May, the county felt settled, confident, solved. The bugs were gone, the fields were clean, the system had worked, and one man, standing in a field with flowers, still looked wrong. By early June, the fields were still clean. Too clean. At first, no one noticed. Why would they? Clean was the goal. Clean meant control. Clean meant success. But something was missing. Something small. Something easy to ignore. Movement. The kind of movement you don't think about until it's gone. No beetles crossing the soil. No wasps hovering near the leaves. No spiders between the rows. Just stillness. And then, the bugs came back. Not all at once. Not in the open. They came back where no one was looking. Under leaves. Along stems. At the base of plants. Aphids first. Clusters forming again. Faster this time. Then the worms. Then the boars. And this time, nothing slowed them down. Because the first spray had worked. Exactly as promised. It killed everything. Not just the pests. Everything. At the co-op, the conversations shifted again. They're back. Already? Worse than before. Someone frowned. That doesn't make sense. Another voice. It worked the first time. A pause. Then the conclusion. Then we spray again. That was the answer. Simple. Familiar. More drums. More orders. More passes across the fields. Predator X7 again. Stronger this time. More coverage. More certainty. Because when something fails, people don't question the method. They double it. Across Boone County, sprayers moved again. Mist settling over rows that had just begun to recover. And again, the fields went quiet, at least on the surface. Thomas didn't spray. Not the first time. Not the second. He kept walking his field. Same path. Same routine. But what he saw was different. Yes, there were pests. Aphids on the leaves. Worms near the soil. But there were other things too. Things the others didn't have anymore. Lady beetles. Clusters of them, moving through the aphids. Notice unless you were looking. Spiders, webs stretched between stems. Predators. Not many. Not enough. Yet. But they were there. And they were working. One afternoon, a neighbor stopped again. Same road. Same question. You still not spraying? Thomas shook his head. No. The man looked out across the field. Studied it longer this time. You've got bugs, he said. I know. And you're just leaving them? Thomas glanced down at the leaf in his hand. Then back up. I'm letting them get handled. A pause. The man didn't understand. Didn't try to. Good luck, he said again. But this time, it didn't sound the same. Back at the co-op, the tone was shifting again. Less laughter. More frustration. They keep coming back. Every time we spray. It's worse. Someone mentioned Thomas again. But this time, no one laughed. Because the pattern was starting to break. And the one man who had done nothing was no longer the easiest one to dismiss. Because in farming, results show up slowly. But once they start, they don't stay hidden for long. By late June, the difference could be seen from the road. Not in numbers. Not yet. In color. Across Boone County, fields had changed. Green, but uneven. Patches fading. Edges thinning. Plants stressed. Leaves marked. Growth slowing, because the cycle had started. Spray. Kill. Return. Repeat. And every time, it came back faster. At the co-op. No one laughed anymore. No one joked about flowers. They talked about cost. Second application. Third. More fuel. More time. And less control. It's not holding, someone said. Nothing's holding. Victor Crane stood quieter now. Still selling. Still confident, but not the same. Sometimes it takes a second pass, he said. Sometimes a third. No one argued, but no one sounded convinced, because now they had something to compare. Thomas's field. From the road, it looked different. Not perfect, not untouched, but stable. The color held, even, consistent. The edges, where the flowers grew, were alive. Movement, constant, subtle, but there. Beetles, wasps, spiders, things that hadn't come back anywhere else. One afternoon, a truck didn't just slow. It stopped. The driver stepped out, walked up to the fence. Same man who had laughed weeks before. Same voice. He didn't call out this time. He waited. Thomas noticed him, walked over. They stood there for a moment, looking at the field. "You didn't spray," the man said. "No, you've got bugs." "I do." The man looked again, longer this time, then pointed, not at damage, at movement. "What are those?" he asked. Thomas followed his hand, a cluster of lady beetles moving through a patch of aphids. "Those," Thomas said, "are the reason I didn't spray." The man frowned, didn't understand, not fully. "They're eating them," Thomas said. "The ones you're trying to kill." A pause. The man watched them, really watched. For the first time. "They weren't there before," he said. Thomas nodded. "They don't come back. If you wipe everything out." The words stayed there, simple, hard to ignore. Back at the co-op that weekend, the question changed. Not, "Why isn't he spraying?" but, "What is he doing?" Rick leaned against the counter, listening. "They're coming back faster every time," someone said, "and his aren't." A pause, then, quietly, "Maybe it's the flowers." No one laughed, not this time. Because what sounded ridiculous 3 weeks ago was starting to look like a pattern. And patterns are hard to ignore. Thomas didn't say anything at the co-op. Didn't explain it. Didn't argue. He didn't need to. The field was doing that for him. Because the difference between killing a problem and managing it doesn't show up in the first result. It shows up in what happens next. And now, what happened next was starting to matter. By late July, the numbers finally showed up. Not opinions. Not guesses. Numbers. Across Boone County, yields started to come in. Field by field. Row by row. And the pattern was clear. Fields that had been sprayed once were down 10%, sometimes more. Fields sprayed twice, worse. Damage stacked on top of damage. Because every time they tried to fix the problem, they reset the system. And the problem came back stronger. At the co-op, the board filled with numbers, names, yields, losses. No one talked much. They just looked, compared, calculated. And then, someone wrote one more number. Thomas Hale. Top yield in the group. Not by a little. By enough that everyone noticed. A quiet room. No laughter. No jokes about flowers. Just silence. Victor Crane stood near the back. Not speaking. Not selling. Because there was nothing to say. The same product. The same method. The same certainty. And a different result. That afternoon, 3 trucks pulled into Thomas's driveway. Then another. Then 2 more. Men who had laughed weeks earlier, now standing at his fence. Not joking. Not dismissing.
watching. Thomas walked out to meet them. Same pace. Same calm. No one spoke at first. They just looked at the field, at the edges, at the flowers, at the movement between the rows. Finally, one of them said it. "What did you do?" Thomas didn't answer right away. He bent down, lifted a leaf, a cluster of aphids, and right beside them, a lady beetle. He held it there for them to see. "I stopped trying to kill everything," he said. A pause. They waited. "I let the system work," he added. Another pause. Longer this time. Because that wasn't the answer they expected. And it wasn't one they could copy. With a purchase. One of the men pointed toward the flowers. "That's it?" Thomas shook his head slightly. "Where it starts. No explanation, no lecture, no step-by-step. Just a direction. The same way his field had shown it. Slowly, without forcing it. Over the next season, a few of them tried it. Small strips, edges of fields. Not fully committed. Not at first. But enough to see. And once they saw the pattern again, they didn't go back. Victor Crane still sold product. But not the same way. Because the story had changed. And people had seen it. Not in a pitch. Not in a promise. In a field. 38 farmers followed the same solution. One farmer didn't. And the difference between them wasn't luck. It was understanding. Sometimes the problem isn't what you see. It's what you remove. Because when you try to eliminate everything, you don't just destroy the problem. You destroy the balance. And without balance, the problem always comes back. They laughed at a man planting flowers. Because it didn't look like farming. Until it worked. And when it worked, it wasn't the flowers they remembered. It was the moment they realized they were wrong. Sometimes the most expensive mistake is doing exactly what everyone else is doing. And sometimes the simplest idea changes everything.